All right. So thank you so much for joining today. My name is Jason Lynch. As I mentioned, I'm the head of marketing at NetCertive, and we are going to be diving into the marketing metrics that matter for location revenue growth in 2025. I'm excited to dig into this topic because really it's about clarity. It's about cutting through the noise and helping figure out for your particular business what are those metrics that matter? What are the ways that you can really gain clarity into your marketing, into your growth, so that you can project your success, know what you need to do to change course, and hopefully these are a good primer for location stakeholders. And if you're someone that sits at the home office or corporate office and you work with location stakeholders, hopefully some of these ideas are helpful in making sense of what can feel like some madness sometimes when it comes to the overwhelm of digital metrics. So I'm sure you're familiar with NetSertive already if you're on this webinar, but uh, we really help brands take control at the local level. And everything that we do around search, display, social video, listings, web solutions is all about how to make your brand shine at the location level and really make that digital footprint meaningful and personalized so that we can help these locations grow. And that looks like, it's obviously a lot of data, a lot of optimizations, and that takes metrics. So today we'll cover the metrics that matter, connecting metrics to your business, and then applying it. So we'll have a few case studies along the way, some frameworks for you all to look at. And if you have any questions, definitely just let me know. You should be able to enter questions in the chat or Q&A. And if even if you want to come off mute today, you can come off mute. We can have a conversation, and we'll keep going here. So for this conversation around metrics, I know oftentimes it can feel very overwhelming, right? So what makes marketing feel like noise versus a cause for celebration? Because sometimes you look at metrics and it just makes your eyes cross, right? Other times you're dancing in the streets because it's obvious that you're growing, that it's working. And I think the big answer to that is that metrics are only useful when they fit into a story. I think it's really interesting how there's no single marketing metric that makes sense on its own, right? There's no, or is this amount of impressions good? Is this amount of clicks good? Is this cost per click good? None of it matters unless it's in relation to multiple other metrics. And where they really matter is in the lifetime value of a customer. Because if you said the cost per lead is $1 million, you might think that's crazy. But if the lifetime value of customers is $1 billion, then $1 million lead might sound pretty good. So it's all about fitting the uh, metrics into your business plan and your business narrative and how you're growing your business and the channels that matter. So it's really, if I move this metric, what's going to happen? And that's how you create a digital strategy. Because if you're feeling like we're not getting what we need out of the marketing investment or we're not seeing a lift, then you really have to figure out the scenarios around these different levers that you can pull to change the way that these metrics come together. So the way you start to do that, to figure out how can you walk down the line and understand if you move a metric, what happens, it's really understanding the key signals on the 100 different routes to your business. Because if you think about when someone converts, right, they have typically gone through multiple touch points with you previously. And it's the same where, like, it's a good example of uh, people can drive an endless number of physical roads, right, to get to your business. Think about that. There's so many physical ways people get to your business. And you have these different pathways to conversion. And in the digital world, they're just as varied as in the physical world. So maybe you see a car pulling into your parking lot, right? Maybe, are they going to come in? Are they going to be a customer? It's a good signal. You might have a new foot traffic customer. They're walking towards your business. Are they going to come in? Maybe. But oh, look, they're holding a package. They're probably going next door to the FedEx place. So that would be poor intent, right? Maybe they're holding a dog in your pet store. That's good intent. So they come into your location, and do they want to talk to a salesperson right away? Are they sales ready? Do they already know what they're looking for? So you're marking these signals in your mind as you're standing in your physical location, even without thinking about it. And so, with digital metrics, the goal is to figure out for your business what are those similar signals in the digital world that would indicate someone is a good intent lead, right? And then how can you set up event tracking and conversions so that you see those high intent signals in your reporting? So if you know that if someone visits your services page and then your location page and then clicks a pricing button, that is a pattern that you can mark as something that you follow, and then you can optimize for that. So you're seeing if you know that's a key pattern, how can you do more to figure out are we getting more of that key pattern, right? And then you're tracking that. So it's knowing here's where people are coming from, and then here's how we turn them into customers. And so when you think about your business and how people become customers, it's really at the location level, it's so unique to your business strategy and planning. And I think digital marketing, I think of it like a spotlight, right? And it's an opportunity to shine a spotlight on the things that matter most so that you can get a return on your marketing spend. Because if you try to pull all the levers, right, try to market about everything, all of your offers, uh, it really ends up being too much. It's too expensive. It's not possible, and it's not meaningful. Um, every business really has something that works well. Maybe there's a seasonal service, maybe it's your best closer, maybe it's a high value package. And your job is really to shine your marketing spotlight on that thing. That's the best hook that's gonna uh, drive people to that special thing about your business. So it could be that you have a great loss leader offer that just gets people in the door, and then they have word of mouth, right? That keeps them telling others about it. It could be that you have an amazing sales team that it does in-home appointments, and if you can just get an in-home appointment, they're going to close 80% of the time or something like that, right? So you optimize for those things, and you don't treat all services equally. You really highlight what converts the best, and also highlight what is required for profitability. So if you have a limited budget to spend every month, it's really about how are you pointing that budget like a spotlight so that you're making sure that there's a good return on that budget. So when you think about your goal is to shine the light on these pathways to your business and the signals that are signaling good intent and growth toward uh, the services that do the best. It's really then how are you monitoring all of the marketing channels that are driving people to those pathways, to the signals, showing you is this working or not. So it's really easy to break it down just on the performance overview side. I'm sure you can think of it like overall performance and then campaigns and channels. So looking at website traffic, the conversion rate, the call volume, the amount of leads driven, the ad spend, return on ad spend, revenue, that's a great place to start for an overall, we call it the marketing command center. right? So just how are we doing? Is this going up or down? And are these numbers fitting within both our benchmarked expectations, where we want to be growing, and then even comparing to other locations in your network or industry benchmarks as well to see how you're doing. And then on the campaign and channel side, right, you're looking at impressions, the ad creative performance, clicks, cost per click, cost per lead, cost per customer, lifetime value. And we'll get into some more examples of the levers that you can pull and how these all come together. But overall, if you have this kind of a dashboard, then you'll be able to really understand, okay, are impressions going down? Well, has your bidding changed? Has your, are there more competitors in market now? If you're getting less clicks, right? Maybe it's time to change out the ad creative, for example, or if you change the ad headlines, and then, you're experiencing a greater cost per lead. Well, maybe there's a disconnect between the ad headlines and your landing pages, for example. So it's all connected. And I think that is a really important aspect of this. And so thinking about levers to pull, right? If you know that you have, I've talked a little bit about this already, but if you have, for example, the like cost per click. So the cost per click is really high. You have a multi-step journey, looking at the targeting and keywords, right? Maybe you're trying to go after your keywords and search terms that are the most competitive, but you could crush it with low competition keywords as an alternative strategy. I know it's really interesting looking at working with a lot of franchise groups and seeing who is really dealing with competition in their market, because it's very obvious based on how expensive the targeting and keywords are. Sometimes you can own a niche in a whole town, and that's great. Other times there are 10 franchisees in one city just from within a network, right? In a huge city. So it can be really difficult to understand, the full market, right? Looking at a high level, you really have to zoom in and say, all right, what are we facing here? And how can we rethink our strategy to lower the cost per click? And then for uh, conversion rate, right, it's really the landing page experience and offers. And one of the biggest things we see is the mobile landing page experience, right? If you have a really slow loading mobile site, I mean, I would say pull up your mobile site on your phone right now and see how long does it take to load. If you look at it with fresh eyes, are you seeing a lot of trust signals around a location? If you go to a location page, does it feel local? Does it feel like, okay, I can trust this company? Is everything performing and loading as expected? Because it's very common that we audit websites and it's not the case, right? The mobile version is really slow and there's not a clear offer, or there's a localized ad, and then when it comes time to convert on the landing page, it's just goes to a generic form, right? So you want to be as local and meaningful as possible with your conversions. So if you don't have localized landing pages and you don't have a lot of trust signals and pictures of the employees at your location and reviews and things like that, that's a great place to start to increase conversion. Because if something feels local and personal, then people are much more likely to engage and convert on a landing page. We see it all the time. Also business processes, right? That's another huge lever to pull. So post lead, your sales operations, your data loops, how are you closing the gap with people? And we'll talk a bit about uh, looking at the like coaching on calls, for example, is part of it, right? So there's a great opportunity to see, great, we have this lead, but then what happens to it? And I know franchisees oftentimes struggle with keeping their CRMs updated. So the more you can just put those processes in place and really make sure that the uh, leads are processed correctly, and it really goes back to basics. I would say in like 60% of networks, there's a huge opportunity to improve here. And even in the rest of them, there's always some opportunity to improve. But oftentimes, if you have someone in your location who you say, okay, you're the data czar, you're in charge of making sure that this data is updated and everything is clean, and explain why, right? There's typically one person that's very process oriented, I find, that is just happy to enforce that. And it's really about allowing you to use that clean data to further create campaigns, marketing, loyalty, and it's just about closing the loop and making sure that people are following up with quickly. If you look at the few case studies here, so we think about business strategy, and so that's who's the target market. So this was a Kia dealership that we worked with, and what were they wanting? So giving auto shoppers what they want. And in this case, if you think about the impressions, well, what are the quality of impressions, right? What's the quality of any one of these touch points? The quality of an impressions, the quality of the headlines of an ad. Well, that's only relevant to who is being shown those impressions, and the next step in the offer that you're giving them. So if you think about a auto shopper, huge trend is auto shoppers want inventory based cars, right? They want to shop for a specific car and not just generic, be booted to a generic brand page. So they really want to see local inventory advertising. So we offer that as one of our ad solutions. So local inventory. So when we implemented local inventory advertising, we saw the metrics we were tracking were the clicks and impressions, right? The cost per click, cost per lead, conversion volume, ad spend efficiency. And the outcomes were we saw an 80% increase in conversions because the offer was better. 86% lower cost per click because they were targeting better, right? So the auctions that they were in were uh, less competitive, right? And they were more specific, so there's less competition and it cost less. 27% lower cost per conversion. So when they clicked, there were more people clicking and converting, and so it would, when you combine that with the lower cost per click, you get a much lower cost per conversion. So that's an example of how all of those metrics can come together. When you look at another example here of how they come together, so like localizing retailer landing pages. So it's really important, as I mentioned, having localized landing pages. And when you take any one of these channels, there's a sub set of metrics that you're going to monitor. And so you have for landing pages like the bounce rate, right? If you have 99% bounce rate, that's just bot traffic. Um, there's a lot of weird things happening right now with traffic with these different kinds of AI bots. I think that'll really mature in the next year of everyone really understanding what traffic is showing up from these different bots and how is it being tracked or not in your different analytics platforms. But like a bounce rate, conversion rate, the time on page speed, mobile performance, as I had mentioned before, is so critical. And so when we created these landing pages for this retailer, the offers were the main thing that really drove a lot of opportunity. And it was a very seasonal business. And then having more meaningful, specific location information and service area location if you had multiple locations in a city. So just being able to have a lot more of that meaningfully specific information and great offers to drive action increased. There's 40% increase in organic traffic because they had better search engine optimization. There was a 35% increase in the conversion rate and 20 hours saved weekly. I think that's another great metric. So this corporate client had a team making updates, and the technology saved them 20 hours a week. So if you think about the amount of time it takes for you to execute a campaign and a lift on leads, right? Sometimes local owners will say, I'm not going to do digital. I'm just going to, be feet on the street, be the mayor of the town and go to all these festivals and do different things. And that can be great. But if you look at the time the value of your time and the time it takes to show up and be in all those places physically, and if you look at how long the commitment is in managing a vendor that does your digital for you, oftentimes that's a big part of the equations. How long are you spending to get the leads? So it's not just the value of a dollar on a spreadsheet. It's really, okay, how much time and effort and sweat equity did I put into my local lead gen program? So yeah, you want to think about saving time as well. Uh, Another one, turning conversations into growth. And as I mentioned before, if anyone has any questions, definitely enter them in. But turning conversations into growth. So we have a product called Call Insights AI, and it allows you to really easily look at call volume and duration, sentiment and outcome, call source, answer rate. So you can monitor these different stats, and then you have visibility where previously you had none, right? So you can see insights into customer trends because it records the conversations and then surfaces what the what the keywords that were used, or if it's a positive or negative sentiment on the call. The ability to coach staff, because you're able to hear how the staff answered, right? It'll suggest ways that the staff could improve, and ultimately that's going to lead to improve call outcomes. So it's definitely an opportunity to use technology, right? Going back to that many paths to your store. What are all those key paths? One of them is when someone calls your business. So how can you create metrics around those key paths? If it's your Google Business Profile page, right? There are so many metrics that you can get just around the Google Business Profile page. You could have a whole dashboard just showing interactions and traffic from the Google Business Profile page. So think about the key, touch points that someone has with your business, and then ask yourself, what dashboard do I have now with metrics for this key touch point? And if you don't have one, then that's a great place to start. So then what are the few basic first things you would want to see? And it's how many, what was the result? Is that going up and down previously? And is that related? Is that good for us, for others in our network? So definitely enter Q&A. I know some people submitted questions ahead of time, so I did include those. This one was, what should I do if my leads are up but sales haven't improved? And this really is a common scenario. It usually means there's a disconnect between your marketing and maybe the phase that your campaigns are in. Like maybe they just launched, or they're just getting traction, or they're optimizing. Because in some way it hasn't caught up. Either the leads are the wrong leads, or it hasn't caught up to your the sales process, right? In that full funnel. So maybe you're just weeks away from seeing a lift in sales. Maybe it's a long research cycle and you have a high consideration purchase. So it might be many months down the line before that season really picks up, and then you start actually getting conversions. People are just kicking the tires now. Um, or maybe it's your in-store or phone experience. I mean, we've seen it where a network had their, the phone calls weren't being answered, or they were going to a voicemail that nobody checked, or salespeople were rude locally, right? So there's a lot of different scenarios where it's not working. Um, so you start really by checking what kind of leads you're getting, right? Are they qualified? Are they asking about the right services or products? If not, your ads might need to be tighter or have clearer messaging. And then if you look at what happens after someone uh, clicks or calls being answered quickly, is your team following up on form fills? Even the best marketing will not make up for dropped handoffs or slow response times. It's really all about speed to lead. And, sometimes it's a training moment where you're listening to calls and you can help spot where conversions are breaking down. So marketing can drive interest, but the follow through is really what drives revenue. Another question is, what's the best way to manage budgets and make changes in real time? I think if you're a NetServe client, we manage budgets for you and we'll align with you on the budget for the month or quarter, and then we'll make budget adjustments, on the fly. Our system makes a lot of them, our strategists make them. But usually it's good to just think about it on a weekly basis, because sometimes it's just hard to tell. If you look at a single day, it's hard to really tell performance based on only a single day of a campaign. Like, you really need a few days, a week, weeks, months to really start understanding the trend and how things are going through. But overall, if you do see a spike or a dip in leads, it's definitely a signal to make an adjustment and pay attention, right? So that's the kind of thing that you're monitoring, especially on conversions and your cost per conversion. So if you should have those as far as the best way to do it. I mean, you should be able to use a tool like the Insights Manager, the analytics dashboard that we have, if you're running other campaigns, having dashboards that surface those salient points so that you can definitely be monitoring these key um, performance metrics in a marketing command center type environment where okay, if something goes wrong here, we're going to act on it immediately. Someone also asked, I don't have call tracking. How do I figure out my CPL, or cost per lead? And so if you're not using CallRail or something similar, a great way to do this is just to start by tracking form fills and asking, how did you hear about us? Or you can ask that when someone calls or books. Even you can have a tally in a spreadsheet. And if you don't want to do it on every call, you can do it for a week. You could maybe do it in the third week of the month, for example, or until you get 100 calls or 100 answers to the question. And then you can get a sense for how people are hearing about you. And sometimes that's the most helpful. Even if you do have a lot of attribution, it's still really interesting to ask, because let's say you have a CallRail lead and you have a phone call, right? You know what ad it was from, but then you can also ask them that question and they'll say, oh yeah, I see your billboard all the time, or oh yeah, I saw your truck. My neighbor did work with you all, right? So usually the full view of your funnel is definitely helped by that self-reported attribution of getting people to share where they heard about you. And that's where you start having stories, right? And I think it's a good way to close by just talking about the stories that you're able to tell. So when you have all this data, right, you're able to put your analytical hat on and be monitoring it, but then you wouldn't go to your team on location and say, hey, our click-through rate on our Google Ads is going down or going up, right? It's really, how can you tell stories based on the data? So maybe you'll learn, oh, well, there's more competition in town now, or we switched our ads over to really be concentrated on this one landing page. So we really want everyone trained on this offering. So just it's like figuring out how to really rally everyone with stories and align on we launched these campaigns, this is how it's going, we're seeing this many leads, we want to improve the close rate on this campaign because currently it's only closing at X and the return on investment is not high enough. So we really want everyone to rally around that. So that's the thing where you have to kind of make the jump between quantitative to qualitative, from data to stories. And that's where you'll really be able to feel like you're leading your location's revenue growth with the metrics that matter. So with that, I'll say thank you so much for joining today. And if you have any questions, contact your customer success manager or me. Happy to chat through any of this. And again, I really appreciate your joining here on this Wednesday in July. So I'll send out a recording, and that is what we got today. So thanks a lot, everybody.